Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge Podcast. You are here for Tinfoil Tuesday. I was going to do Tinfoil Tuesday every Tuesday, but it just doesn't happen that way. It's really hard to go down conspiracy theory, quote unquote, rabbit holes and stuff like that and uncover everything. But I call today Tinfoil Tuesday because I dive into a few things with my special guest, Robby Starbuck, who I reached out to on Twitter, who has the same kind of stance on Cuties as I do. So today we're going to dive into kind of like the conspiracy of Hollywood and the exploitation of children. And if you don't think this is a thing, you're wrong. Like, it's actually a thing. So I reached out to Robby, and Robby actually has been in the industry, in Hollywood itself, for years and years. Very successful filmmaker, has worked with very, very reputable actors and film stars and music stars and doing music videos. He knows the industry more than you or I do, for sure. And so I wanted to reach out and talk about the Cuties debacle, his take on that. I wanted to talk about what Hollywood does to kids and why kids tend to not be very successful in life after Hollywood has had their grips on them. We dive into a little bit of politics because, as you can tell with Robby's shirt, he's Republican. And you know, as you guys know, I lean conservative centrist. So I'm, you know, as I get older, I used to be super far conservative right because I was a Christian, grew up in a fundamental church, and I used to think that like everything was sinful. And as I get older, I kind of love listening to both sides of everything. And so you're gonna hear me say a lot. You're gonna dive into more politics than I've ever dove into here, and we're gonna talk about what the left and right here a little bit about this topic and about who is actually standing up for these. And I want to preface it with this, that I do believe that most people are against child exploitation, but it cannot be denied that the ones that are defending this film, none of them are conservative. And take that as you will. And so a lot of people at all costs, progressives specifically, need to push forward progressive ideologies, and they feel like taking a step back, and especially with this, might jeopardize another area of the progressiveness that they're pushing towards because some of these things are in tandem. And so you're going to hear a lot of that here. But Robby's got some really great insights into the industry. He's met a lot of really cool people, and he's got the same take as me on Cuties. And there's some eye-opening things that are happening here. And one big thing you're going to notice here that he says, and don't miss it, is that this whole thing could have been solved super easy by two people, Barack and Michelle Obama. All they had to do was say, we don't like this movie on the Netflix platform, and reach out to the Netflix people and say, we're not going to come on your show because they got the biggest deal in Netflix history. And all they had to do was say, we're not going to do it. And then Cuties would have been removed. So the fact that people have a platform that can help this and are not using it speaks volumes too. Now, I'm not saying I'm anti-Obama or anything. Actually, I like Obama a lot, to be honest with you. I'm a Canadian, and people up in Canada tend to think Obama's cool. I don't know why. But I'm just saying that I want you to know that I sit center, and I really do. But sometimes, especially with child exploitation, if you're going to call me, you know, an alt-right because I want to stand up for kids' rights and the anti-exploitation of children, go for it. I'm cool being labeled whatever you want to be, because if that's what it takes to put a voice out there against exploitation of children in Hollywood specifically in this industry, whatever it takes. So the interview was garbage because I hate Zoom. And I'm going to have to switch to different platforms because Zoom records us, and when I talk, it switches to me, and then it switches back to him, and it's dumb because I'm recording here, and then I have my webcam on and I have a light on, so it looks like I'm like Annie Lennox on here, all super white, like bright, so I had to you'll see it, it's garbage. But the conversation is important, which is why I kept it. So I hope you get something out of it. If you have any questions or concerns or anything that I've missed or that I maybe fell short on in my opinion, I'm always learning. I'm always here for you to talk. So thank you for watching, and thank you for being here. This is a really great conversation. Don't miss it. Hey everybody, welcome to the Dad Challenge Podcast. My name is Josh, and I have this incredible guest. I can't even believe it. I reached out to him on Twitter one day because I was seeing what he was talking about, and I'm like, hey, you want to collab? And he's like, yep. And I'm like, okay, holy shit. So let's do this thing. I'm very excited about it. Robby Starbuck, thanks you for coming on the show. You have a lot to say, and I want to get right to it because you are like this powerhouse in this industry, and we're talking about something really important, especially as dads, about the exploitation of kids in Hollywood and in the music industry, and that's kind of where you land. So before we get started, tell me a little bit about you, like how you got to where you are, and just kind of leave it there because I want to leave it open to where we're going to go next.
First, thanks for having me. This is something I've been really passionate about talking about, especially coming from the position I'm coming from in Hollywood. So I've directed and produced, you know, Oscar-winning actors, Oscar-winning actresses, some of the biggest music stars in the world, people like Snoop Dogg, Megadeth, Smashing Pumpkins, Akon, I gave you the list before. It's a long
Yeah.
list. I can't.
It is a
remember
long
just-
list. Like, okay, before we go on, this is amazing. Who is your favorite Hollywood or, famous person that you've met that's like the best, coolest person you ever met?
Probably Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins.
Really? That surprises me. Oh, right on. And
He's a cool guy, and he also, for my birthday, he played me a private like concert type thing with all my favorite Smashing Pumpkins songs. So he won me over with.
dang, I guess so. I agree then. He's now my new favorite too. I know you're not going to say who's your worst favorite.
I will.
Oh yeah?
No,
tell me who. Okay, tell me who we think is awesome, but is not awesome.
I'm probably the most transparent person in the industry. So yeah,
Okay.
worst would be Snoop Dogg. He's a really terrible person in my opinion.
Oh, okay.
I've talked about it at length. I mean, he's just like the most misogynistic dude I've ever come across. And I'm the last person you will see be like, oh, hey, that's not nice, or be offended by something. I'm telling you, it's that bad. Like he's not a good person in my opinion.
Do you think so? I know you're interested, but do you think the hip hop industry in general, and we'll probably get to that a little later, is still as bad as it was? Because I grew up on Tupac and Snoop Dogg and all those, and Biggie. Is it still just as bad today as it was back then?
Yeah, I'd say in some ways it's actually worse because at least back then a lot of what they were doing or saying they actually believed in. Now it's a lot of guys who know what they're telling youth to do. They know that it's wrong. They know that it's going to get them put in jail. They know it's going to hurt them. And they know they're not going to live happy, successful lives, but they do it for the money.
Yeah.
So that's in one way it's worse. I would say it's worse too because it has the largest reach it's ever had. Mm-hmm. And that's something that's kind of interesting. When people have asked me about directing music videos, they're like, oh, so that's not as big of a deal anymore because MTV doesn't exist. I don't know where they get this idea. More views happen on music videos now than ever did in the past. MTV doesn't come close to the numbers one day on a premiere on YouTube does.
That's right.
So I think there's a lot of sort of misunderstanding from the older crowd about that. The effect that music has and the reach it has now is incredible. It's at the fingertips of everybody across the globe. I was just looking at analytics recently, even on our stuff that's like politically driven. And those videos, like there was a video, we were interviewing my wife and I, the lawyer for General Flynn, and it has like 160,000 views. And even a video like that, I mean, it's been watched in like 70 countries, That was not something that was at your instant reach in the music business, 25 years ago. You had to have a massive machine to be able to move your music to that many countries. Mm-hmm. Now to do that, it's at the click of your, you can just click of a mouse.
Now, I'm sorry, this is how my brain works. So continue, please. Like, give me some of your kind of accolades, some of the favorite projects you've done, because I want to set up why you know what the hell you're talking about, right? So give me some big projects you worked on, some of the incredible things you've done in the industry, where you lived before, kind of where you landed now, that kind of story. Give me your little documentary. The documentary in my life would be, it would start before I was born, because I wouldn't be here if America didn't take my family, and my family came from Cuba, and they escaped socialism, communism in Cuba. And I grew up here in the United States, and I owe my life to the United States. So that's why I've been willing to give up a great career money-wise to fight for what I believe in and to also fight for kids and against exploitation. So as a kid, though, I didn't grow up rich. I didn't grow up with a Hollywood family, but I always knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to make stuff that would give people an escape. If it was for a couple minutes or it was for an hour, whatever it was, I wanted to give people an escape from the madness of life. Mm-hmm. And so I did it myself. I graduated really early. I had already done my first year of college by the time I was 16. And I bought a camera. I was working, part-time and saved up money to buy a camera. And with that camera, I started sneaking into shows, filming bands locally. And then I'd turn it into a music video and I would show it to them. And sometimes they'd be like, I hate this, it's terrible, or not responding. And then other times they'd be like, this is awesome. And eventually one of them said, hey, could you actually make a music video for it? It just kind of snowballed from there. I mean, I wouldn't say I was more talented than other people, but I had a better work ethic. So I was just constantly shooting stuff, editing stuff, getting better. And eventually I was booking enough jobs where I was turning down jobs. And so I was like, well, this is dumb. Why would I turn money down? I'm going to start finding other talented people that
you know, maybe aren't as good at the booking side of things, and I'm going to book them for those jobs. So that's where I started my production company and started signing directors and having them pick up some of those other videos, and then eventually got some really good directors, and they brought in their own projects, and it snowballed again.
Yeah.
And you know, that was the entrance into the industry. But my company has done, you know, we've had contracts with Paramount Pictures, and like I said, I've directed Natalie Portman, Jamie Foxx, Akon, Megadeth, Snoop Dogg, Metric, which is a Canadian favorite, right?
Canadian boys.
Are they still big in Canada?
As soon as they leave Canada, everybody forgets about them. They're like, oh, well, who's next? You know, Justin Bieber's Canadian. No one even knows about him anymore. Just kidding. Yeah. No, they're awesome. They're great guys. Is Natalie Portman awesome? Tell me she's awesome, please.
She's pretty nice.
Okay.
She's like, you know, just kind of normal person, you know.
I think that's what I would see. Just like a kind of girl next door. She's not a diva. She's just normal.
Well, that's the funny thing about a lot of celebrities, is that like people tend to over glamorize celebrity, and like I've seen people before just act like total morons around them. Like, celebrities are not what people expect, you know. Like I see a lot of people kind of make fools of themselves around them when they're like around, you know, that I guess it's like an allure thing or something. But most celebrities in reality, they're very lonely people. You know, like from what I've seen.
But I mean, it's just interesting because you get a lot of people love celebrity for, you know, I get it. I go out to the public. I can hardly go outside anymore with my 30,000 subscribers on YouTube. But no, it's just interesting because it's who, you know, it's just that you get a glimpse into something that nobody really gets to see, and it's kind of interesting, right? Regardless of how it happens. But so I found you on Twitter. You made this tweet about Cuties because I was also, you know, I was looking through the hashtags, seeing who's saying what, and I'm pretty sure the ratio is pretty hard against Cuties on Twitter, but that's where I found you. But then we started talking a little bit, and first, before we go past that, what is your take on this whole Cuties debacle? And then I want to get into what we were talking about before, that how Hollywood actually is targeting these kids. And so when people make the argument, oh, it's not meant for kids, it's meant for adults, you have the inside scoop on actually it is.
So first of all, Cuties is not just a terrible movie. It's not just gross. It's not just bad. What they did, I believe, is criminal, and I believe they need to be investigated and charged. And that takes it a step further than a lot of people have said. They're like, oh, I want you to take it off Netflix. What people don't realize is, I know how this industry works, okay? There's an interview that's very telling that the producer and the director both did separately, to separate outlets. They were asked about the casting process, and they were asked about one specific role in general. Both of them said the same thing, that they had done auditions for over, one said 650, one said 700 girls for one specific part. And they key in on the fact that they were auditioning girls who had no experience. That's not normal in Hollywood. You don't go looking for girls who have no experience in the industry and then audition 700 of them. That is not a normal thing.
Well, why though? Why do that? Why were they doing it?
So the only thing I can come up with for why they would do that is to make these girls audition these dance moves on camera, and that there's some sort of nefarious reason why they want to do that. Because I can't come up with any other reason from a director or producer standpoint. I can't give you a valid reason why you would need to go through 700 people for a part like this, especially for an indie movie that's not really that well acted. And if you're doing this in the first place, you know, you would think you would look for somebody who has some experience, right? Like that just makes logical sense to people. The only reason you would think psychologically somebody would look for somebody with no experience is because you want to be able to take advantage of their naivete. You want somebody who's green, that you can lead in a certain direction, and they won't know that that's not normal. That's the only thing that I can come up with for why they would do that. So my position is pretty hardcore on it. I think that there's actually, you know, a criminal element to this. I would like an investigator of some sort. I mean, this has crossed federal lines now, because even though it wasn't shot in the U.S., they're distributing it in the U.S. And I think that we do need to have law enforcement take a look at this and figure out, are those tapes in the United States? What was done with those audition tapes? And beyond that, maybe working with our partners and allies overseas to find out what we can do there to look into what happened, what the process was, what safeguards were in place, or what statutes may have possibly been violated as a part of how they did this.
Because all the girls were probably 11 years old, were they not? Or at least 11 or younger. Yeah.
While shooting could have been younger. I'm guessing they're referring to them as 11 now in interviews. So I'm thinking while shooting may have been 10, but in some cases, but that I can't say for a fact, either 10, 11, 12. But regardless, another element to this is the parents. The parents also are green, and they also don't know what's right. In the industry, they should know what's right and wrong in terms of being a parent, because I can tell you right now, as a dad, whether I was a director or not, there's no way in hell my 11-year-old daughter was doing it. And I have an 11-year-old, and I can tell you there is absolutely no way on God's green earth that you could pay me enough money to have my child do that. And there's also no way, because I've raised my daughter well enough, there's no way she would do that. Yeah. But beyond that, you also have to look at, there's the choreography. As a director, especially who's done a lot of music stuff, I'm acutely aware of how choreography works. To get 11-year-old girls who have no experience acting to go through the choreography and do this stuff, do these dances, you're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of hours of choreography, okay? This is, again, something that they filmed over and over and over again. And a director in explicit detail with a choreographer was telling them what to do. So when you see those scenes where they're grinding up and down and they're hitting their private parts, that's a director is directing them to do that. In any other context in life, literally any other context, you had a grown man or a grown woman telling a child to touch their private parts, it's a criminal act.
Yes.
And it should be.
But I want to circle back. Do you think that maybe even at some level when they were doing the auditions, that parents were bringing them into something they didn't know about and then found out what it was and said, hell no? Do you think that some level parents were like, what the hell is this?
I can just say I hope so. I don't know, but I hope so. I hope that there was an element of that. I hope there were some parents who just walked out. I just can't, I can't wrap my head around there being that many parents who are willing to just hold up their child like a piece of merchandise and just sell them off.
Well, the only way I can square it is just like 650 or 700 parents or sets of parents, okay? The only way I can square this is that they were being less than revealing about the audition process. They're saying, look, this is a dance movie for little girls. We're going to, they're hip-hop dancing. They might have hidden it from the parents and looked for all these people. And so what I'm thinking is that maybe the idea was they brought them in and said, okay, well, it's a little bit more revealing. And then the parents probably, a lot of them backed off. If anybody out there is watching this from France or wherever this thing was filmed and you were part of that process, please reach out to Robby or myself. I would love to speak to you about that audition process to see how it actually went down, because nobody's speaking about it. Like if there's 700 parents out there, one of them's going to whistleblow on what the hell happened.
I hope so. If any of those parents are out there, I mean, I hope you speak up. I really do.
So circle back to, you're a director, okay? You've been doing hip hop videos and dancing and showing and choreography. You've been a part of that intimately for all these videos you've done. So the actual filming of this is generally, how many times are they taking over and over and over and over again when they're doing these types of scenes?
For kids, it's a whole different ballgame, because kids are not as simple to direct. It's hard for me to say with kids, to be entirely honest, and here's the reason why. On my sets and my company sets, we actually we have safeguards in place. So we don't allow kids in areas where scenes are being shot where there's violence or anything that's sexually explicit, anything that could even suggest sexuality. We don't have kids present anywhere near those scenes. Beyond that, we also have a set teacher. So a set teacher has to be with them at all times, or their parent on our sets. There is never a time where the child is alone without their set teacher or their parent. So when it comes to actual filming, we didn't ever use kids for choreography because it never made sense. And we've produced thousands of projects we've never had to do, that I can think of in my head. I can't think of one time we ever did kids choreography for dance. But I do know what choreography and dance is like with adults. Mm-hmm. And adults that are practiced, have been professional dancers. And even with them, sometimes you're talking about 80 plus hours of choreography going into a video. Mm-hmm. So with kids who have no experience doing this, I can only imagine we're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of hours of these kids doing this.
With a choreographer who's teaching them hypersexualized dance moves. Like this is in a Cardi B video, these types of dance moves. This is like, we'll get to Cardi B in a minute, but this to me just screams, this is what people argue. So this is the devil's advocate. Well, that she made this film to expose that this is wrong. And we all know that that's the dumbest logic in the world, right? The guy that said, hey, I made a snuff film and I had to kill somebody to make it, but hopefully I get the message across, right?
It's like if Save the Turtles campaign did a commercial murdering turtles on screen to tell you that it's really mean to murder turtles.
Yeah, it's dumb, but it feels like to me like what you're taking that extra step, and I'm glad you are, to say, look, there's been illegal activity here. So if there are thousands of hours, these girls with these dance instructors, and like we just hope that they're female at one point. I mean, who knows? Maybe the reason that they, like you said, that they hired these green actors is because they don't know any better, and maybe there's some kind of nefarious crap going on in the back end because they just wanted to use their position of power and filmmaking power to, like I'm gonna say it, like to groom these girls.
Yeah,
that's scary.
I can't find any other excuse. Like, I'm out of ideas, and I've directed, produced a lot of projects. I can't tell you another reason that they would audition that many girls, and they're not talking to the public and being straight with the public about this process. So I think the natural conclusion is have somebody investigate this, you know. And I have to give props to Ted Cruz from Florida. He got on there, got with other senators, other congressmen, and told them, you know, let's get on board and ask for an investigation.
Mm-hmm. Where do you know where they are with that so far? Has it taken off? Has anything happened? Well, now they got Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died. Now they're on something crazy. But like,
they sent a letter. So they sent a letter to the Department of Justice asking them to look into this and investigate. Department of Justice is pretty tight-lipped about stuff like this. Okay. So if they are investigating it, they haven't said anything yet. And I think that that's probably actually a wise thing not to say anything at this point. I would wait until you have maybe some key elements that you need, and then say something about it being an ongoing investigation. But right. I would hope so. I hope they are.
Okay, so my take on why Netflix is not taking this down, and I know this is Tinfoil Hat Tuesdays, which is today, Tinfoil Hat Tuesdays, is that Netflix and Hollywood as a whole, and we're going to go down a rabbit hole, and I'm going to actually just kind of dig into your professionalism here and what you've seen with your own eyes, okay? Is that Hollywood elite, political elite, and the people who actually take advantage of this trafficking and these kids, because we know it happens. Everybody knows it happens. There's just nobody wants to talk about it. But Netflix has a bottom line where they're like, look, we're willing to take a huge step forward in normalizing this type of behavior, normalizing the hypersexualization of children, and we don't care if it's going to cost us this many billions of dollars. This is my conjecture, and they're not there yet, because how many people have canceled? How much money have they lost? Why do you think they haven't taken it down yet?
I'm going to rewind a little bit on what you said. So let's go to the first thing, you know, the sexualization in Hollywood and the way that children are sort of treated and all that. It can sometimes be overstated in terms of how, you know, some people think everybody in Hollywood does this. They don't. There's great people in Hollywood. There are some really bad people. I mean, the great people are a very small group, but there's good people that are not, you know, hurting children. Right. Maybe I don't agree with them politically or whatever, but there is a group of people who are bad people. And that's something, I mean, we've seen it coming out, you know, through Me Too and all these other things. That's no secret. And we've seen with people in politics and really any position of power for as long as humans have been alive, people in positions of power eventually, they end up in this place psychologically, not all, but some, where everything's not enough anymore. You know, power is not enough, and whatever conquest you've had is not enough. They look for the most vulnerable, difficult thing that they think, oh, if I can get away with this, then I've gone to the next step, whatever it is. And this is something you can ask any psychologist. This is not an abnormal thing to recognize is occurring. This happens. And I think you have to examine sort of how we give out power as a society because of the dangers with power. And this is one of those dangers, you know, as people abuse those powers and they hurt the most innocent, vulnerable people among us. You know, so that's one thing is I don't want to overstate it too much, but those people do exist.
I'm going to tap into what you just said there. I believe the exact same thing that you believe, and you're in the industry. I'm not. That the industry, what happens when you get powerful and rich is that you literally can have anything you want at any moment, and you've literally taken part and of everything that you could have. You literally have more money than you know what to do with. And so the next thing that you go for is that everything's insatiable. Like you get so much of everything that it's just what's next. It's what's next and what's next. And what's next for these people is the forbidden. And so when a rich person says, well, I have power and money and everything, I want the thing I can't have. That's my thing. I'm like, when you get to a certain echelon, especially with doing the things, devious sexual things. That's why Jeffrey Epstein exists. Jeffrey Epstein doesn't exist unless these people exist, especially in the upper echelons of power. He doesn't get to be where he is with the protection he had until the end, where he got killed because he got caught, unless there's an elite level of people who are taking part in his services.
With somebody like Epstein, and Epstein doesn't exist unless there's other people willing to take part and cover up what he's done.
Right.
And in that exists to a certain extent too, because there's some people who have been protected. Like you look at somebody like Bryan Singer, director of X-Men movies and so on.
Yeah.
He did Bohemian Rhapsody recently. He's been accused, I don't even know how many times at this point, by young boys. Okay.
Yeah.
And in Hollywood, it's been a very known deal that there was some really shady stuff happening with his camp of people. Mm-hmm. And it had been reported to LAPD. LAPD looked into it. They never did anything. More boys came out. They still never did anything. You got to wonder to yourself, is the reason why they're not doing anything with victims on the record is that there's people protecting him? And, it's sort of the same thing with Epstein. Epstein had victims coming out one after another to law enforcement, and nothing was ever being done, So there is real reason to worry about a two-tier justice system where if you're rich enough or you're elite enough or have the right friends, you don't face the same consequences. And I think that's the right conversation to have is about power and consequences. Is we need to have one justice system and we need to dole out consequences equally. We haven't been, and I think that's something that is incredibly important if we're going to have a just and moral society, because at the end of the day, countries exist and fall on law and order. So if you don't have law and order, you don't have a set of rules that everybody's abiding by, you lose that law and order, you will lose your country. Mm-hmm. It may still be a country, but it's going to become a different country. Yeah. And that's what people kind of have to decide functionally is, do I want to live in a country that somewhat resembles what I've known and grown up with, or do I want to know a different country? And if you do, what do you want that to look like? Because with no law and order, it's going to go one path. If you want more law and order, you're talking about a different path. Mm-hmm. But you have to functionally make those decisions in your head and decide with your vote. And you do actually have to vote. A lot of people say one vote doesn't matter. You look at a place like North Carolina, they had 59 different elections decided by one vote just in the last 15 years. Yep. So one vote definitely does make a difference. I'm not one of those people that says you can skip voting because one vote doesn't matter. Even if you're in a blue state, you may make a difference on a county level with which sheriff comes into office. And if it's the right sheriff that's willing to expand, their program for the sex victims unit and be able to put more resources towards going after saving children that are maybe being exploited in your area, that may make a big difference, that one vote, so people do have to be thoughtful about that.
Yeah. I mean, tell me about your experience in Hollywood, because you lived in LA for a while, right? Am I correct about that? You lived there for a lot of your life. Tell me about the experience of Hollywood and how they ingest children and what they do to them, and why most kids, my favorite actor growing up, Macaulay Culkin, love that guy. I wanted to be his best friend. I saw what Hollywood did to that guy. He looks like a completely broken person even to this day. Tell me how Hollywood ingests children, and why do they put them in this little circle and then spit them out with nothing? To just, who cares? To the wolves, basically.
Oh, again, it's is what we're seeing in the Cuties movie is they make any, sort of rationalization they can make at the time. Oh, the kid acts mature, or they look older, or whatever it is. Like a kid like Lindsay Lohan, they'd maybe say, oh, she looks older, she's always been around adults, she just has a more mature mind. The reality is people need to come to the realization that kids are kids. Mm-hmm. And there's actual brain development that is not like an individual basis deal. Your prefrontal cortex isn't even all put together till you're in your early 20s. Yep. So, you look at it at that age, the decision-making ability and all that, there should be no adult adults facilitating that type of behavior or activity that was facilitated for kids like Macaulay Culkin or Lindsay Lohan or whoever it is. And you know, I'm big on personal responsibility and individualism, but in the case of those kids, these are kids you're talking about. They don't have as much personal responsibility when the adults around them are shoving drugs in their face. If they're being brought to parties at clubs that are for 21 and up, and they're not even supposed to be there, there's a reason why these things are happening. It's because the adults are failing them. And so instead of like saying, oh, it's, you know, this thing or that thing, it's really about adults and safeguards and how you value childhood. Hollywood doesn't value childhood. It values an asset. And those children are assets, not children to them. So they're an asset to be exploited, and it's about how much money can we make from them. Can we, you know, sell this poster with their face on it? Can we do this? Can we do that? Can we get them to this event and that event and this event and that event? And they're not thinking about the well-being of the child. How are we serving this child's needs? Are they emotionally safe? Are they, you know, physically safe? How are we making sure that they're safe on set? You know, all those things are just not, they're not a consideration to enough people. But like I said, I also don't want to paint with a broad brush, because there are good people that I do know are trying to do the right thing on the production aspect, you know, producers and
Well, I was going to ask that. Has anything changed since like Macaulay Culkin's time to now? Has legislation been put in place? Have the rules been straightened out? Because as far as I know, there's the Hollywood level of the circle of, you know, dirtbags still exists. So is it better now?
That's a multi-tiered answer, because some things have changed since then. Like, say, set teachers have more rigid rules and background checks and stuff now than they did back then. And major studios, when they're shooting in LA at least, have requirements about studio teachers at all times. So those things have changed. But, you know, there's some crooked studio teachers, you know, that don't do their job the way they're supposed to. And, you know, production's responsible for making sure that you weed out bad from good.
Right.
But on another level, there's sort of some other things that I would say are just as bad or worse, because it's really a matter of like who it is, you know? Some people are genuinely good people. They have kids like we do, and they would never want to hurt a kid, and they do whatever they can to make kids comfortable and safe on set and to have a great experience and to do their schoolwork and to leave at the end of the day. And all that's asked of them, you know, after everything's done in post and the movie's coming out, is they do press or whatever for a couple days. That's fine. And I think you can actually do that and have a kid be well adjusted. But the problem is you don't work with that same person over and over and over and over again. You eventually work with the weirdo, you know, and there's a higher percentage of weirdos in Hollywood than there is within the general public. So like if you went to let's say a physics conference, you know, you'd maybe find a certain percentage of people who are a little weird, you know. It'd be a much lower percentage than in Hollywood.
Why does Hollywood attract weirdos? Why does Hollywood bring so many weirdos to its doors?
I think it's about, you know, I mean, there's a lot of tendencies about Hollywood that would be attractive to like sociopathic behavior and narcissism.
Yes.
So, you know, if it's attractive to certain, or ideas of grandeur, you know, so you fill those out psychologically. You're talking about things like bipolar, narcissism, that is like clinical narcissism. You could go into any of those things. So there's like a certain mental pathology to all this, I think, and that's why you would attract more of those people that are a little crazy, whereas something like physics is not known for being this grandiose, you know, media thing. So the people who seek that out are generally people who really do love physics and they want to, you know, discover new things and do cool stuff. And, you know, you're not going to attract weirdos, basically, you know, I mean, some people might call them a little nerdy. I think they're really cool. So, you know, I think that's one of the things about Hollywood is when your draw is, hey, you can be a big star, you're attracting people who want people to love them, you know? And that's another problem. On the political end, the wokeification of Hollywood, so much about it is just people wanting to be loved. You know, they actually themselves don't hold a position on any of these things. They just say whatever it is that they're being told and reflected back to them. You will be loved and receive adoration and praise if you commit to this behavior.
Yes.
And so they commit to that behavior full force because that's what they've been told will give them the attention that they crave.
Can you tell me, in your experience in Hollywood, that maybe even by 1 degree of separation, like some kind of insane story you heard that maybe started, something tripped you up, right? You're in this industry making big bucks. You probably live in the dream. You're out in LA. You're meeting famous people. What shifted for you to go to more like along the political edge that you're on now? Where or do you have some kind of story you can tell that's you're willing to tell where you're like, I heard this and I'm out. Like I can't believe that happened.
I would say I was always more conservative in certain contexts. So you know, I always thought of art as kind of like a place where you could create things for different blocks of people. You know, you could like almost have a niche and you were creating for them. It wasn't intended for them, you know? And so I had all these like compartmentalized ideas about, okay, you could make something that maybe is a little racy or a little this or that, and it fits in this compartment, and the people over here aren't going to see it, or you know, it's not going to be a bad influence because this isn't made for their demographic, you know. And that was a wrong-headed idea. But what really changed me is becoming a dad. You know, I mean, that was the biggest thing. Is I think the biggest change is, you know, when you have a baby, I'd say the first thing that changes is you do things to make sure that child's always going to be financially safe, you know? And then you go to the physical and emotional safety. As they grow up, you recognize what things you're having to protect them and shield them from. And then you can do your own sort of audit on yourself on how do I contribute any of these things to society that other parents are having to shield their kids from. And so as I got more clout, I guess, in the industry and was doing bigger stuff, I started to be privy to more of the analytics and how they target demographics and stuff. And that was really what disturbed me, is finding out that the labels were actively targeting kids for content and videos and songs that I had always just assumed were targeted to adult audiences because they're adult songs. It's adult content. It's very sexualized.
Yes.
And I never thought that they were targeting kids with it, you know, but like you take a video like Cardi B's WAP video, I guarantee you the analytics will show you the majority of the people watching are not even 18.
That's why I wanted to segue into that, because you're in the industry. We all can say that, and and a lot of people, especially woke feminists and all the people out there that are like, this is freeing for women. This is big. Like, we can get to that argument any day of the week, but it cannot be argued that movies like Cutie, songs like WAP, by Cardi B, who I don't like, by the way, although I have parodied one of her songs, you know, in spite of her, but you know the industry. So guys, we're listening to somebody who's in the industry right now. So if you want the inside scoop, Robby here's going to tell you how they do that. How do they target kids, and why do they say they don't when they actually do? Because they're the main ingesters where they're making the most money, especially when it comes to streaming. My kid listens to that. He's 14. I have to keep turning on explicit on his Spotify list because he keeps finding a way to turn it off. But they are absolutely targeted. Tell me how, like, give me the inside scoop of how they do it.
So there's sort of a multitude of things here. First off, I'm not so sure that they say that they don't target kids, because I don't see labels even saying that anymore. I remember them saying that in the early 2000s. I haven't heard anybody say that recently. You look at somebody like Cardi B, she acknowledged 4 years ago that she's a role model for little girls, and that she had a moment around, I think she said Halloween. It's in people on their website, if you look up Cardi B role model, where she said, you know, I recognize that these little girls really look up to me and I need to be a better role model, and I'm going to stop all the craziness and I'm going to try to be a good role model. If WAP is her idea of being a good role model, she's a psychopath.
Yeah, that's insane.
That's you know, I think she forgot her promise, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And as far as how they target kids, I mean, everything now is algorithms. Yep. So, you know, this isn't just them. This is working in concert with big tech. And, you know, there's so much crossover between these areas because, like, you look at somebody like, say, Jimmy Iovine. You know, he has crossover into Beats, has a partnership with, I don't know if it's still ongoing, but there's a partnership there with YouTube that there was for a little while. And then he has the Apple partnership, okay? And then he's also a record executive. You know, so there's all these crossover things throughout the industry like that where things fuse together, and funky things seem to get prioritized. So say if a certain person who has the right clout wants X album to be the first thing that kids get featured to them on iTunes, or they want, the algorithm at YouTube to pick up a certain track, they work directly with YouTube. I know this because I've emailed with the people at their Vivo team and with the labels coordinating for video release. So they coordinate, their releases, and the Vivo stuff feeds into their algorithm. And so if a kid had previously watched, let's say, Bruno Mars, or let's say Pharrell, Happy, that song Happy,
Yeah.
That's a okay song for kids. I let my kid listen to that song, right?
Yep.
And it's just about being happy. It's a cute song. The problem is it doesn't end it happy. The next suggested video on whatever week is going to be a different video.
Yep.
So if the label feeds in a video to the algorithm, or feeds it into YouTube, and YouTube puts it in the algorithm to play after those videos, and it's now Cardi B WAP that plays in as the next video, or whatever video it is, that's not intended for kids or shouldn't be intended for kids, is what plays automatically next. I know a lot of kids, what they do is they just let it keep playing. They watch one video after the other after the other. Same thing when you're listening to Pandora or Spotify or whatever it is. Those algorithms are something that are very, I think it's one of the untold stories of transparency in the tech age, is that people don't understand algorithms. Because if we could kind of wake up the masses to how they work and how they operate and how they kind of lead people in certain directions, not just when it comes to music, but even in terms of political ideas.
Yes.
Like if you search Lindsey Graham, right, and this is a political version of this. If you search Lindsey Graham on Google as of yesterday, the first result was actually the person he's running against is the first to donate. Okay. Yeah. And so if that's the case, that algorithm is prioritizing that other person over him, even though you searched his name. If you put donate, Lindsey Graham, the first one is actually to donate to, I think his name's Jamie Harrison, to donate to him. So that's an algorithm issue. It's the same thing with music and content overall, is those people are deciding what gets prioritized, what does not. And throughout Silicon Valley and throughout big tech just in general, they're very, very left-leaning. So everything they do shifts that direction. So I'll give you another example. On Twitter, there's a tab in the Moments tab that says 2020 elections. Every single tweet inside of it is either a Democrat or a Democrat news source. Okay. Every single one.
And that's just because we know that Jack is he's diehard, Democrat, and so these algorithms that parents don't understand, and part of this too is ignorance of parents, and not in a bad way, meaning that parents they don't get it. I get it. I understand how algorithms work, and I'm in tune with my kid's social media and his TikTok and all the girls he's watching on there. It's crazy.
I'll go a step further. Yeah. I'll go a step further. I won't give my kids TikTok. I won't do TikTok. I won't do this stuff. They're and no, I don't mean to be offensive to you, but I just believe so wholeheartedly after everything that I've been through in the industry and come to know, our kids only get to be kids once.
Yeah.
And they have plenty of time throughout their life for social media. My kids are not going to be spending any time on social media until they are, late in high school years, basically. Yeah. Until that point in time, and that's really just a function of getting them ready for the world type thing, and I think that's enough time. But at this point right now, I have 4, 7, 11. They're not going to be doing social media anytime soon. They're too busy doing other stuff. My oldest is busy she's making her own vegetable garden, and she's done it from scratch. And we just picked her first tomatoes today.
Oh, that's great.
That's a real tangible experience, something she's going to be able to take that skill for a long time. And how many little kids are missing out on those experiences because their parents just say, you can just do whatever, and they have no parental controls at all. They have no, block on hours or whatever. That's another issue though, is that parents are not being given the tools that they need in the first place, because all of the parental controls that are out there are miserable. They're terrible, terrible tools.
Yep.
You look at one, Google made one a couple of years ago that was called Google, it's called Google something for parents. And then you download the other one for your kid, Google something for teens and children.
Yeah.
that app was supposed to be a parental control that made everything so difficult. All the kid had to do was go to incognito tab and they could do whatever the hell they want. Okay? That's how it worked.
And you got to think the elitist technology guys, the super nerds who work at Google, they know that they can overcome all these issues, but they just don't.
That there was a backdoor of just clicking incognito and the kid could do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And so the kids knew this too. You know, kids are really smart about technology. That takes them maybe a week to figure out at most, you know, and that's a kid who doesn't already have other friends who know. But you look at basically all of those parental tools are terrible, and they make devices just so difficult. You know, the technology is out there at this point for every one of these tech companies to say, hey, here's a kid-safe browser. And that's it. We don't have a real kid-safe browser out there. There's things like Kid Search that is supposed to be a safe search engine, but in terms of like a whole browser built in with ways to protect the child and all that, we still don't have one. They did a couple of startup companies who try to do this stuff, and it's just that they don't work.
Yeah, or they get bought out and tore down. They get bought out and tore down. Because here's the reason. This is what I think. Again, tinfoil hats on. Here we go. These industries need these kids to ingest this content because it's how they make their money. Like, let's be real. I started talking about the Micah and James Stauffer exploiting their kid on YouTube, making hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars off kids, all these family vloggers who exploit their children. They make money off the secondary exploitation of children, or, primary exploitation of children, because they need them to ingest the content. If you think out there that they're not a bunch of brains in a room trying to figure out how to get kids to ingest your content because you're getting paid for it, you're wrong, because they are. And it's been like that since I've been watching Voltron and He-Man in my living room and the commercials that I would ingest when I was eating my cereal. It's been there since day one. And now it's even worse and more intelligent than it's ever been. Even artificial intelligence is now, they're trying to program the algorithms, artificial intelligence, to target your kids. And if you don't think so, you're sorely mistaken.
I mean, I think there's definitely something for the fact that kids haven't decided their brands yet, which is an important thing to advertisers. Is, that's why this demo is really important to advertisers, because they want to establish a loyalty between the consumer and them. So if you decide that, AT&T is the best phone company, you haven't decided that yet at your age. You're going to decide that based on your experiences between, let's say 13 and 25. So that block of time is very important to advertisers, that they get in your face and they earn your trust. So advertisers do that by, being a part of whatever it is you're excited about. So if you're excited about music, they try to fuse themselves in music, whether it's product placement or whatever it is. That's their way of getting brand exposure to try to buy that loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about, maybe you know a little bit about this, but as I'm going to go back to the TikTok thing, because you're right. Like I fought my kid on this until he turned 14. We said, okay, 14 is our age. My oldest son, my 18-year-old, he got it when he was like a little bit more like 16, and we started, as long as we monitor it, whatever. But here's the thing about TikTok that really bugs me, and you're kind of connected to the music industry, is that you see these little girls dancing on TikTok, and one of the big tweets I saw about this Cuties debacle too was that, like, look, if you allow your 13-year-old girl to dance on TikTok however she pleases, and then you're mad about Cuties, you're a hypocrite. But here's the issue. The algorithms, these platforms know that these girls are 13, 12, 11, whatever it is, and they're allowing you to choose music that is super explicit, with N-words and sex and everything else in them. And why does nobody speak up against this? Like, why is nobody saying a word? How do we fix this? Do we lobby Ted Cruz? How do we get this shit off?
We've been talking about it.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I've been
calling now for TikTok to be banned for 2 years, and that is actually a really, really big deal for me, because I believe so fervently in freedom of speech, and I would never want the government to shut anything down. Mm-hmm. This is the only thing I've ever asked for to be shut down, because it's a Chinese intelligence operation.
Right.
TikTok is not a product, it's an intelligence operation, it is a psychological operation, and it has worked incredibly well on our youth.
But to what, are you talking about like Chinese people, and this is like, I'm interested in this. Are you saying the Chinese developed this to tap into intelligence to what end? To make money advertising music?
there's multiple ends of this. So number one, our military has been asked not to have their kids download it now for a while. And they've been banned. The Pentagon put out a briefing to soldiers too for them not to have this app. And the reason is it can be used as a spying device, number one. And that's pretty much all inclusive. That app is like just like a piranha. I mean, it's just biting at every little bit of information it can get and feeding it back. And it feeds a much larger machine. So it's kind of hard to understand if you've never been to China. I've been all over China, and I'm never going back because they probably want to kill me at this point. But the amount of surveillance technology they have in China is like nothing you've ever seen as an American. And their intelligence is so incredibly advanced when it comes to that stuff. All of the bits of information that they've been taking from kids' phones, number one, okay, so let's imagine for a second that you are in national security, okay? And your 17-year-old kid has TikTok, okay? And their phone is, let's say, in this bedroom and your bedroom's over here. And let's say you're talking to somebody, one of your coworkers on the phone from this room over here. This phone over here may very well be able to spy on what you're doing over here.
Well, can I add to that, tinfoil? COVID hits. And all these people have to work from home. I'm just saying. It came from China.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far.
I'm putting it together. I might be killed tomorrow.
This is, though, what the government is concerned about and has been concerned about is its ability to be used as a spying device, number one. But number two, there is a psychological component to this. I have never seen, and I mean, like, I've been around a while now, and like, I've been through all the social media things. You know, you go from MySpace and Friendster and Napster. You go through all these things, okay? And I've never seen a social media thing that kids have more addictive behaviors to. Like, I mean, how often have you walked by a kid doing a TikTok? I've walked by, in California, it was all the time. Here,
every day.
Less. But you see it all the time, and it's like this really manic addictive behavior, and they do it's weird behaviors. You know, if we're being really honest, it's weird stuff where they're, you know, you're like, it's just odd.
Yeah.
And we've somehow convinced kids that it's a social currency. And so they're addicted to doing this weird thing that nobody can quite understand why it provides value, but it's now a form of social currency. And so the kids are actually with likes and all that stuff and the dopamine. I don't know if you know the science of it, but the science of the dopamine hits and everything. You know, when you delve deeper into all that, we're actually conditioning kids to accept a world where there's some form of social credit, okay? Which is something China's really big on. Because if you look at likes are essentially social credit. So when a kid sees another kid has 1 million likes, you know, on, let's say, TikTok, and maybe you only have 100 likes on TikTok. That was a very old man move to call it TikToks. But that was a slip of the tongue. But, you know, that you look at those two, you're no longer equal because one has the higher social value. And it's the same thing as China's social credit system, which is something that the left in America would love to employ here, because the idea of a social credit system would say, hey, you have ideas that we find unpopular. People shouldn't work with you. You shouldn't be entitled to get a loan. You shouldn't be able to buy a house because you're a bad person. You know, ideas like that are incredibly dangerous, you know, and it's why we have to protect our freedom by not allowing a national security threat that's run through a foreign government that really hates us. I mean, this is another thing people don't understand here in the US about China is China makes no qualms about their goals. They would like to be the most dominant power in the world, and they know the United States is in the way, you know, and they've never made qualms about that. They don't lie about it. They're very straight up honest about what their goals are. You know, I think it's one of those things like, it's like the prize fighter who's been a champion for like 5 years and they end up taking that next fight for granted because they're just so used to being the champion. That's where America's at right now. We're a sleepy prize fighter, and if we don't wake up before the next fight, we're going to get knocked out.
Yeah. I think social engineering is a big part of this whole new world that we're emerging into with our kids. Like, they're being socially engineered or socially groomed to be something different based on these higher powers and political, avenues that these elites are taking to say, this is how we're going to shape this next thing. Like, this is way out of the realm of what any parent can even think of right now. Like, if you don't, like, most parents don't think the way we're talking right now. They don't want to. They don't want to know. But in the end, the whole conversation here, kind of the overarching theme here, is that our kids are being targeted to either become normalized in the sexuality so that the predators can take advantage, and those are the ones that are in power can make it normal, and they're being changed, like physically, like mentally, in every absolute way. And we can go back and say, well, we want it the way it was. It's never going to be that way, so let's stop saying that. But at some point, there's got to be a level where we have to say something is wrong, and we're almost too far behind the ball now that it's going to flip over, and we're going to be like, uh-oh, now we're going to take 20 steps backwards and fix this for the next 100 years. There's too much to take in, and that's why parents are just like, what am I going to do about it, right?
People need to be real about the politics of all this, because nobody wants to politicize child exploitation, but the reality is child exploitation, it is inherently political because one side is doing it. It's not Republicans putting kids in front of cameras and making them gyrate to sell a movie on Netflix. It's just not. It's all Democrats that run. Netflix is owned by a Democrat, one of the largest Democrat donors, actually. And the people who are fighting against it are elected Republicans. The only elected Democrat who has said anything negative about the movie is Tulsi Gabbard, and Tulsi Gabbard is hated by every other Democrat. So that should tell you something.
Well, it speaks volumes, because this is where it gets hard as a parent and as somebody who doesn't really talk about politics because YouTube doesn't like it. But it's a place where you're almost chastised for not allowing your kid to be whoever they please when they're like 2 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, and that whole, you're right. You cannot deny the fact that liberals and Democrats, even in Canada where I'm from, like we're very liberal in Canada, is that when you go against the ideology, you're pariah. You're pariah, and if you don't, you're wrong. But at the same time, think about just this one thing. Like, take away every other political platform, all the ideologies, all the rhetoric, and let's just stick right here with the exploitation and hypersexualization of children. The only people for it who are allowing it on the platforms are Democrats. Twitter, Facebook, they're all on the left. Even Facebook's kind of more central, I think, but they all allow this to happen on their platforms, and they know it happens, and they do nothing about it. That's why there's like Daniel Cohn, that's why Micah Stauffer, that's why family vloggers, all these people I talk about are allowed to continue it, because they are run by these people who are like, this is progressive, this is where we need to be going. And unfortunately, we're letting that happen. We're not speaking up enough as parents. Even like, again, it is political, yes, but it doesn't, like, that shouldn't be a Democrat or Republican. That does not, exploitation of kids shouldn't be. It should not be.
And it didn't used to be. It used to be one of those things that we all agreed on, which is, I think actually, this is actually a really important conversation, because this is why politics is so divisive now, is we no longer have those things that used to not be political. We used to all be able to agree that exploiting kids was wrong. Mm-hmm. We used to all be able to agree that, teaching kids insane, sexual ideas was wrong. We don't agree on that anymore. We don't agree on any of those agreeables anymore. And that's where the breakdowns in society happen. When you're divided on those core issues, it's a deal breaker for me. Like, I can't be friends with you. I could be friends with you if you have a different idea on taxes than me. I could be friends with you if you have a different idea on regulation than I do. I can't be friends with you if you're okay with the sexualization of children. This is a society-altering issue. And people need to recognize that, because this is how, people get very comfortable in the idea that we're not going to end up in civil wars again. That's not the case. You look throughout history, there's periods of calm, but when societies restructure, reorder into ideas that part of the society finds to be morally reprehensible, you end up in civil wars. There are certain moments and certain issues where people draw a line. This is one of those issues for me. I mean, I'm willing to stake everything on it. My kids will not be a part of it. My kids, I won't allow them to be hurt by it. And so if that means literally anything, I will do anything to stop these people. I will do anything to stop people who want to hurt kids.
Yeah, and so that starts at fundamental education. So here in Canada, if you want to teach my daughter who's 8, puberty, penis, vagina, all that stuff, go for it. I'm all for it. I consider myself kind of a centrist
That's just anatomy. That's normal. That's normal stuff.
When you're teaching
my kids about ANAL and things like that when they're 11, I have a problem. And those who, I am now chastised for having a problem with that. That's where this gets a little bit crazy. And you're right. Civil war doesn't necessarily have to be guns and death. It can also be like social. It can be like, eventually it will come down to violence. It will come down to something big or major splits. Major splits where countries are developed and broken up and exits start happening where you're like, fine, you go over there, do.
I think we're going to see, if this continues and we continue on a path where they're normalizing this and the other side is fighting against it, you're going to come to a place where eventually people would want to reorder society. And what does that mean? That means different countries,
Yeah.
An unthinkable, crazy idea, because it's voluntarily making yourselves weak. Mm-hmm. And I don't know anything else where you do that, in life, where you voluntarily say, hey, I'm going to cut my leg off. Mm-hmm. But that's how big of a deal this issue is if we're going to protect kids, if the other side is saying we don't want to protect kids, we think that they should have adult rights, they should be able to vote, they should be able to have, romantic relationships with adults. That is a societal deal breaker where I will not be a part of that society. And I'm not the only one. I know I have tens and probably 200 million people with me that would not be a part of that in the United States. Maybe more, maybe 250 million.
Well, the overall, if you pop onto Twitter any night of the week and talk about this, look for these types of conversations, you're still going to hear people that are in Democrat and far left and say, nobody is for the normalization of MAP. Stop saying that. But here we are. Literally, here we are still if you don't, people just don't want to admit it either. Look, nobody really wants the exploitation of children except for the ones in power who utilize it for their own nefarious,
I actually think that's wrong at this point. I've had so many people that are hardcore feminists and stuff like that defending this stuff. It honestly has blown my mind, because for a while I was convinced this is just these are certain people that are loud. Mm-hmm. The amount of people who are defending it to me is concerning to me.
You're seeing a different trend.
I'm seeing a different trend that I did not see 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. This is a different trend. And it's one where, I really just feel we have to wake up to what's happening. If we don't, we're facing something much worse. And, if people get anything out of this, my life would be so much easier to just keep my mouth shut. It'd be so much easier to just keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
Keep doing what I was doing, and it's the thing a lot of people dream about doing. You get invited to the parties and you're making good money and you live in a gated community in LA and you're by the beach and all that. A lot of people dream of that. Mm-hmm. I can tell you right now, it's the best thing I did to just walk away, leave, go to Tennessee, live in a state with family values, and have my kids be free on a farm and just live free, get to experience nature, ride horses, and do all that. It's the best thing we ever did to get away from all that madness in LA.
I think there's going to be
ask themselves, why would somebody do all of this though? If they didn't see something incredibly dangerous down the road. Mm-hmm. And I see something incredibly dangerous down the road that if we don't reverse course here and as a society recognize the mistakes that we're making, we are headed to a path that is very dangerous.
Yeah, for our kids. For us, not so much, but you're right. Our kids and then their kids. And so I think, well, yeah, you're right. Because then if you're not cool with all this new fandangled, this new progressive behavior and ideologies, then you're going to be canceled. You're not going to. If you don't have the right ideology now, people are being canceled, targeted, and fired from their positions because they had a wrong political stance. Not even necessarily racist or anything. Even wrong politically to say something. They're being it's getting down to the level where people are going to start getting desperate to keep their mouth quiet. And then, but what I think is going to happen, and I'm Canadian, I don't have a lot of skin in the game politically in the US, is that the silent majority is just going to keep their mouth shut completely. And it's going to 180 on the Democrats so hard that they're not going to see it coming. That's the only way this really works, is if people just keep their mouth shut and just just don't even, because that's where the left I see is forcing people to, you believe what I say, right? If you don't believe my stance on this thing, then you are literally hate violencing me. Right? Like, say, if you don't believe the thing I'm telling you right now, you are hate and violence, and you are the worst person on earth. That has been the thing that has shifted in the last, I want to say, 3 years. Not even 4, not even when Trump was elected. 3 years, it's been just steadily creeping into this big step forward where, like, if you don't believe this, you are literally Hitler. And we gotta figure out how to combat that, because conservatives tend to be more, for lack of a better term, polite, and that we tend to take the high road a little bit more, not all the time, but we tend to be the ones that don't scream in a car when Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies and screams when Trump's elected. We don't tend to be the people that attack people coming out of Trump, at a Biden conference. We don't tend to attack people who are eating at a restaurant or a patio. We don't do that, right? Conservatives don't do that. And so at some point, you're going to have to start getting some teeth and start figuring out how you're going to combat this, because you're allowing them to walk all over you, is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and the irony is that really one side of the political aisle in the U.S. is not really set up for a civil war, and the other side is.
Yeah.
And the side that is actually set up for it is the side that's very patient and very, like, we're putting up with a lot of, tantrums, and that's fine. We'll put up with tantrums, but at a certain point, if they push the wrong buttons, bad things will happen, and I don't want to see those things happen in my country. I really don't. And the reality is again, like I said about sleepy people, they don't understand how quickly societies fracture and split apart, something incredibly dangerous. In Cuba, there was a silent majority, just like we have in the US, and those silent people thought, well, I can just be quiet for now because I don't want to hurt my business or offend a friend or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. The reality is, by the time that it was too late, they hadn't spoken up yet. And that led to the complete destruction of their society. They lost everything, people's homes, their possessions, everything, because they waited too long. None of them ever thought it would happen. They never thought somebody would take their house. They never thought somebody would take their car. They never thought somebody would take all their possessions, ever. They never thought that was a possibility. When Castro was coming into power, he never said he was a Marxist. Mm-hmm. He actually lied about it until he took power, and then he said he was a Marxist.
Mm-hmm. Like, I think we're seeing it. Like, if you even take the last 3 years, what we're talking about, how ideologies have shifted. Cuties isn't a movie that comes out 4 years ago. Yep. It's not a movie. It's not happening. What if you don't see this happen? And so Netflix has not taken this down. So that let's circle right back to the beginning, because this has been amazing. By the way, it's such an interesting conversation. I'm sure we're going to do this again. But
ask yourself what movie's coming out 4 years from now if the parents don't do something.
If we don't keep speaking up on this Cuties thing, if we don't continue to cancel Netflix and continue to, like, lean on them, there's going to be a bottom line eventually where they're going to, like, okay, we've lost like 10 billion. This is not worth it anymore. And we have clearly not reached that line yet. So we have to go harder. And I don't know how else we're going to do that.
And if anybody watching hasn't canceled their Netflix yet, it does make a difference, and you're being selfish. Cancel your Netflix. It's not that big of a deal. There's other places to get movies. Make them feel the pain of what they're doing to kids, because this isn't okay. It's not. And I know it might seem like a joke to some people, but, like, it's really not. When you have kids, you'll understand it's not a joke. This is a very, very serious issue, because what is coming in 4 years from now? And that's something I don't even want to imagine what it's going to be.
It's going to be something crazier, because they take giant leaps, right? And they know that they're going to get a ton of pushback, but then they've gained the inch, right? They know that they're going to take 3 feet, but get the inch. They know that's the inch that they're planning, that inch. And then they're going to take giant 6 feet next time and get 2 inches. And so they know that they just can this is the long con for a lot of people. So it's just, you got to make it work. And guys, reach out to me if you want to know how to get anything that's on Netflix for free. I'm not going to tell you here because I'm not allowed to, but I will always answer you if you want to find out. Cancel your Netflix. There's a lot of great creators on there that have good stuff, and maybe there's a way you can support them, but not through Netflix. So Netflix is also damaging as a creator yourself in this industry. What is Netflix, when they stay silent on this topic and they don't do anything about it and get all these cancellations, all the other creators, why are they not speaking up and saying, Netflix, hello? Like, you have to, like, you're hurting us. Yeah, because Netflix is the king, and they are the gateway to putting their stuff out there.
They're cowards. And another point, there are 2 people who could stop this at any second of any day, any time. Barack Obama and Michelle Obama have probably the most clout with CEO's founder and their CEO. If they said to Reed Hastings, hey, that movie is not acceptable. We can't be sexualizing little girls. We have 2 daughters. How dare you have this movie on there? Take it down. It would have been down before they finished the sentence. Okay? They haven't said a damn word about the movie. And you can't tell me they're too busy to know about the movie. Okay? They know about the movie. They just aren't, they don't care. They're not doing anything about it.
Well, here's a challenge to Democrats and people out there who because I've heard a lot of Democrats say, I don't like this movie either. Like, I think this is one of those ones, you know, you're right. There are some people that stick up for it because they want to, like, continue this, you know, any step backwards of progression of women's rights is like, this is women's rights to them. And it doesn't matter what it is, this is a step back. So let's put those,
Let's take those out of the picture. Yeah. Let's take them out of the picture for a second.
It's such a ridiculous argument.
I know.
It's such a ridiculous argument.
But they will shift, and they'll say that, and then someone will pick that up, and that's in someone else's brain. But let's take them out for a second. Everybody who's in this circle, Republican, Democrat, centrist, whatever you are, who hates this movie, the next step for you now is to say, hey, Barack and Michelle, there needs to be a campaign, a Twitter campaign, whatever it is, information campaign, to tweet at them en masse to say, pressure Barack and Michelle Obama, you guys need to take a step back from Netflix until they remove it. Because if we put pressure on them as a married couple, like take away the presidency, they have 2 daughters, and I know that they are not cool with this movie. You know that they're not. They just have to politically be. But we need to pressure them to say, get off that platform or lean on Hastings to get rid of this thing. Because you're right. As soon as they say the word, it's gone, and you know it.
They're not going to say anything. I'd be shocked. I pray they do. I pray they do, and I will praise them the day that they do. And tell them what a great job it is that they said that, but I highly doubt they do. He follows me on Twitter. I've added him, and I've sent a message about nothing. You know, I mean, they know about the movie. They just it's not worth enough to them to say something.
Enough people mobilize to just do an en masse tweet for like days and days and days and days and days. Enough. Again, the New York is not going to pick it up. NBC's not going to pick it up. Fox might pick it up. I'm just saying, enough people do it. You got to be so loud that eventually someone's going to start talking about this massive tweet that's going out to Michelle and Barack to say, you gotta step in now. We're relying on you as family, as a mom and dad, to help us protect our kids. That's the next step for you. That's your next power play. Cool. Well, this has been amazing. I'm so glad I just got home when you're like, hey, we're gonna get on this something. I'm so excited. Anyway, Robby, thank you so much for this, and I hope to have you on again about, like, as we continue, because you're gonna, like, as I continue to talk about exploitation in the industry, because that's kind of where this mostly lands, because it's the most visible. Man, I'd love to have you on again and just keep talking about it.
Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay, right? Was that not a great conversation? Like, he's got some great insights. I feel like he's even balanced, even though he's got a sweater that says I'm Republican, and he's outward Republican, outward conservative. I feel like he just really was fair about everything. He didn't come across as a nutbag or a nut bar, like any of the fringe. Like, I don't like talking to fringes, right? I feel like he sits kind of more centered than a lot of people, even in the conservative Republican Party. And I feel like he was really careful about the way he would say things, and just because he doesn't want to be discredited for having some crazy opinions. So he's really smart. I got a lot out of that conversation, and I feel like if you go follow him on Instagram or go follow him on Twitter, he's got a big platform out there. He's got a lot going for him, and he's this up and coming voice in the sphere of parents against exploitation. And don't forget, we're a bunch of dads talking about this, and I'm concerned about this because I'm a dad. I'm concerned about this because of the way that the world is shaping our children through social media and the making and normalizing of different things that should not ever be normalized. And we got to continue to talk about this, and we cannot continue to take steps back. So listen to Robby. If you have not canceled your Netflix at this point, stop being selfish and cancel your Netflix. And if you want to reach out to me about how you can get free stuff, I will answer you in the DMs anywhere. So I appreciate you guys watching this one. This is a really hard topic to cover because it can get dangerous too. Because if you take a political stance any which way, half of them are going to hate you. So I try to be centrist. I try to be balanced in everything I do. So I hope you kind of see that. And if not, maybe whatever. But when it comes to exploitation of kids, I don't care what you call me. Like, you call me whatever you want. I will always stand against it. Okay? So yeah, like and subscribe, hit the little bell or don't. I don't care. This is going to be an ongoing conversation with a lot of people, and we can never ever forget this. So, and if anybody ever comes up to you and says, you know, Cutie is a good movie, hit them. Don't let them finish the sentence. It's not redeemable. Not even if the message at the end was, don't do this to your kids. If the big bold letters came up at the end and says, this movie's been about what not to do. It doesn't matter. This movie should never have been greenlit, ever. And you wait, because now if Netflix keeps it on their platform, the next one's going to be worse. And that's going to be scary. Let's continue to talk about it. Keep it open. I'll take my tinfoil hat for the day off. There's some crazy stuff in there. I hope you will forgive me for that. But if you don't have a little bit of tinfoil in your life, I mean, you know, you gotta have, it keeps everything interesting. So let me know what you think below. I hope that your day is amazing. I hope that Tuesday is the day that you find that is the day that you put on your fall jacket and there's like a $5 bill in there that you left from last year. You know that? And you go get a coffee and you enjoy yourself. And you just have an incredible day with the fall, the leaves changing colors, unless you're out in the south and it's still hot as balls. I hope that a cool breeze hits your face and it's like the wind blows right when you're walking by that super hot guy and it's like whew, slow motion. I hope that happens to you today. Anyway, thank you for watching, and we will see you probably tomorrow. Maybe I've got a Micah video coming out soon. I don't know when, but soon, about something. We're doing a timeline video about Micah, and it's going to be a very, very important film. It's going to be a very, very important video about that whole thing. We're going to try to lay it out from start to finish to where we are right now, so anybody who really is interested in the story can have the entire scope, as much as we can put into one video. So stand by for that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to me say things about stuff. I appreciate you, and you are incredible, and you are worth more than diamonds and gold. Like the good gold, not the gold-plated stuff you get at like flea markets.